Hello everyone, welcome to North Antrim. I am Stephen Morrison. I farm here along with my father David, currently running 220 pedigree Holstein cows through a 4-robot system. We have 2 A4 robots and now 2 A5s as well. Cows are currently batched in a high and low yielding system here. Highs are milked through the A5s and the lows are being milked through the A4s. Mainly due for feeding uses, and we're sort of aiming towards a more multi-cut silage system as we're housed all year round. We're separating the cows or dividing the cows. It's mainly PD plus goes to the low ends, or if they drop below 35 litres they will go to the A4s, to the low end of the herd. Our robot story starts back in 2014 when we were looking to start it with the 2 A4s. As we were looking to go to 3 times a day milking, we found the robots made a lot of sense, and cows took to them very well at the start. We maybe underestimated the increase in yield that we got from the robots and the cows. Definitely, I was quite pleased. When we had in the A4s, we were still milking half the herd through a milking parlour, and it worked quite well. They were out grazing, and the highs stayed in the robots, and they were housed all year round. But 2 years ago, as cows produced more and more milk, we decided we would go for 2 A5s and house them all year round, and milk production has increased further. We also milk record every 6 weeks with the NMR here, and current figures are up to 11,973 kilos of milk per cow per year at 335 protein and 3A butterfat. The main differences we see from the A5s to the A4s has to be the quietness of the robot arm. Heifers are a lot easier trained on the A5, so that's why we calve everything down. They go to the A5s first and get trained, and go down to the A4s once they're PD back and calve. The laser also in the A5s is a speedier connection, which is enabling us maybe to get an extra 100 litres a day per robot from the A4s. But as they settle into their housing system, they don't seem to have any preference on what robot they go to. They're quite happy with either. Also on farm now, this last 2 years, we brought in a lady Juno for push-ups, which has been very beneficial and increased in milk yield. Cows are fed only once a day with TMR, so it does push-ups every 2 hours. So, and you can even see the cows coming forward when they see the Juno going up to go feed. And also, our first lady product, I suppose, was a barn scraper. It's the oldest piece of equipment in the farm.
My name's Adam Conn here. I'm one of the partners at Riata Vets, and I've been working closely with Stephen and David on this farm now since mid-2017. And really, my main job here would be with the fertility aspect of the herd. We're here every 3 weeks, pretty much all year round. And back in 2017, we sort of thought that we'd maybe get a bit more proactive with the fertility. So really we check all fresh cows sort of 3 weeks calved to ensure that everything is ready to hit the ground running once the voluntary waiting period's up. Yeah, we try and get as many services in there and try and increase the 100-day in calve rate. We really want that to be sitting in around 100%. I suppose the main focus would be the more cows that we can get sitting at peak yield, the more milk Stephen has in the tank and the more calves are on the ground. So that's really my job on the farm. As well as the fertility aspects, then being on farm every 3 weeks throughout the year, we get to pick up on quite a lot of sort of problems early, even before they become a problem. Even just walking through the cows every 3 weeks, you get to know the herd. You can look at things like the even small things like the consistency of the feces and the condition of the cows, the body condition score we're doing on a regular basis. We test all cows 7 days calved for ketones, just to keep an eye on energy levels. And then again, obviously, whenever we're scanning, to pick up on any cysts. So I find that sort of having this relationship with the clients, being here regularly, works very, very well for both me and Stephen. Then on top of that, we tailor vaccination programs for the cows. Every few months we'll look at things and maybe tweak those. And as well then, we're looking at the cow's environment. You know, as I say, it's maybe just having a different set of eyes on farm. That's something that Stephen maybe would take for granted, that I can come in and say, look, you know, maybe airflow's not great today, or, you know, should we think about maybe getting the fans going, or I suppose even last year we were looking at the young stock housing and telling them to take pieces of tin off here and there, and definitely think that tweaking things on a regular basis makes a massive difference to calf and cow health, I suppose.
So what about what type of vaccinations do you be doing?
So Stephen, I suppose regularly is BVD and ABR. ABR is done every sort of 6 months. BVD is done yearly. As well, last year, possibly even the year before, we actually had a little bit of bother with a virus called RSV in the cow herd, which isn't overly common, but whenever you get these cows producing, you know, 50, 60, even 70 litres a day, some viruses that maybe don't cause a problem in a lot of cows, then, you know, you get these cows that are sitting like the Ferraris of the cow world, I suppose, and they can have problems with it. So we had to actually add in a live RSV vaccine then twice a year also, which, as I say, is not very common, but we just found that on nasal swabs, we were picking it up a lot more often than we should, and cows were just showing nasal discharge and going off milk quite quickly. They were coming back, but it was going off the milk, and as I say, the litres that these girls are doing, it was quite noticeable. Since we've started the vaccination programme, definitely now things are a lot more settled in here. And again, that's coming on. We do that in the calf side of things, but now that we're bringing this into the cow house, we're finding even the calves are doing a lot better as well.
So on the nasal swabbing then, are you doing that regularly, or just as you see issues coming up? Or?
So yeah, we probably watched it for a few days and then I suspected RSV, but as I say, because it's not overly common in adult cattle, I really wanted to get a confirmation on a PCR test, so we sent that over to a lab in Scotland and got a few results back, and then, as I say, we got the vaccine in them pretty quickly. And once you get that live vaccine, the response is pretty fast, and we noticed clinical signs disappearing nearly within the week. So yeah, that's what I say, being here every 3 weeks is really key to sort of keeping on top of things. I would find that in the calf end of things, calf scare and pneumonia come hand in hand. Usually what happens is you get a disease, whether that's crypto-rotavirus or E. coli coming in. The calf starts to scare, its bedding gets wet, the calf gets wet, and then they take pneumonia. So yeah, if I can keep the calf scare under control, I find that pneumonia looks after itself as well. With the calves here, we regularly test, you know, if there's anything even looking twice at me, I will test for a lot of these bugs just to sort of keep an eye on them. Look, with the new calf shed, we've reduced challenge massively this year, so we haven't had too much bother with calf scare this year.
And that test, is that the wee on-farm test?
Little on-farm test, yeah. We keep them in the cars, and you know, you can have a result within a few minutes. It tests for the 4 main scars. Now there are a few it doesn't test for, so I wouldn't always look at it and rely on it. If I still think there's a calf scar, and I'll still maybe send it off for a culture and sensitivity for a few other things.
So at the moment you're finding then that everything's quite good with new calf shed and not needing to do anything preventative at this stage?
I suppose on this farm, hygiene's very, very good to start with. The new calf shed has helped that massively because we're onto new concrete and new igloos and even a new milk taxi for feeding them. So even the likes of the buckets are lovely and clean, and all of these things help for reducing your bugs in the environment. Even this year we're sort of moved from the automatic feeder onto the milk taxi, and I think that's definitely helped the scare problem, just for the fact that we don't have 30 calves in one teat now. We've got individual teats for each calf. So it's all about, at least if we get a problem, it doesn't spread through the group as quickly as possibly some other ways of feeding calves. But again, yeah, if you keep on top of your hygiene, your nutrition, we look at his milk powder, not only his brand of milk powder, but also the strength of the feeding of it. Quite often, whenever I arrive on the farm, Stephen will often find me walking through the calf shed before he even, gets there. And I just want to keep on top of it, more so that Stephen knows that, like, I'm keeping an eye on him and the calves. And if I see any issues, I'll maybe bend his ear a wee bit and tell him, we need to maybe up the powder there, or especially if the temperature drops, I'll maybe tell him to up it a few grams.
What rate would you be feeding at the minute say grams per day?
Yeah, so off the top of my head, Stephen's feeding, I think it's in around the 170 grams per litre. Anywhere between 700 and 900 grams per day we find to really accelerate the calves' growth at that age. Like, at the end of the day, we want to be serving these calves at 14 months, and to get them to sort of 350, 375 kilos at 14 months, we need them hitting the ground and putting on 0.8 to a kilo a day minimum. And the only way we'll do that is by avoiding scour, avoiding pneumonia, and feeding them well. The calves are very well looked after, because at the end of the day, they're the future of the herd. A lot of people get the calf on the ground and say, right, my job's done here, but those calves are the future.
So Mary Jane, perhaps you could outline the current feeding strategies at Stephen's.
Okay, so certainly, as Stephen has alluded to, we have 2 batches of cows within the current herd. We have our high yielding batch, which is currently being milked on the A5, and we have the low yielding batch, which is currently on the A4. In relation to feeding, we're actually treating this herd as 2 split herds. We're feeding separate compound nuts, separate blends, and our silages are different. So if I just start with the highs, first of all, we are predominantly feeding first cut. We have a little bit of second cut going in there. We have 7 kilos of whole crop, half a kilo of lucerne, and 7 kilos of blend. If I look then at the low yielding batch, we are predominantly running a 50-50 split between first and second cut. We have 4 kilos of whole crop, 4 kilos of blend, and half a kilo of lucerne. So in relation to the feed tables, if I go back to the high group, we are feeding a low protein, high energy compound nuts. So we're feeding a 15% currently in the A5 robot. And in contrast then, whenever those cows move to the low yielding batch, we move them on to a slightly higher crude protein, a 17%. Both those compound nuts are high starch diets containing protected minerals, protected fat, again to increase energy density. In addition then to the feed types, we also have a liquid applicator. So generally in here we are running for the first 100 days with glycerol. Now that is in contrast to a lot of other units. Most other herds we generally only run for about 50 days, but given the litres of this herd, we have lifted that up to 100 days. So in relation to the feed tables, we generally bring cows in, we start them at 2 kilos a meal and bring them up to 7 kilos a meal, and that will be over the first 22 days. After that period, we then move cows on to feed to yield, where we can target feed those individual cows a little bit better. Certainly in that first period, we don't want to drive too much meal in there, because our emphasis really is on driving forage and to try and get those cows out of negative energy balance, get them cycling again, and really curtail that production for that first month in lactation if we can. That said, genetically these cows will milk, but certainly we don't want to overfeed them to allow them to really come out of negative energy balance and focus on body condition. If we also look then at the feed tables, we have 2 feed tables for the highs and we have 2 feed tables for the lows. So we will have heifers that are being fed slightly separately to the cows. We generally feed 1 kilo less in here, and the reason again for that is really just we are focusing on longevity. We could certainly push those heifers a little bit harder, but we have found certainly by running that 1 kilo less that's working quite well in here for us currently.
So we're talking about dry matter intakes. What sort of intakes are we getting here, and is it basically, what way is it higher than other farms?
Okay, so on this particular unit, we are actually sitting here at 11.5, 12 kilos dry matter. And to be fair, that is very impressive figures. Generally, what we see across the board in most herds, we're typically that 10 to 11 kilos dry matter. There's many reasons why we're getting the increased dry matter in this unit. Firstly, multi-cut silage system absolutely in this farm drives our current intakes. If we go back to when Stephen initially cut, we were cutting silage in here on the 25th of April was our first cut, and literally by the time we hit about the 25th of August, we had fourth cut in alongside whole crop. So we are cutting in here every 5.5 to 6 weeks, and that is making a massive impact in terms of total energy density and again crude protein. Just looking at Stephen's silage analysis, Stephen's first cut analysis tested at 33.4 dry matter. It was greater than 16% crude protein. We have a D value of 75.6, I think it was, and ME of 12.2. So in relation to actual maintenance plus value, our silage in here first cut is sitting at 12 litres. Second cut on a lot of units this year was a big problem. Stephen again managed to hit his pretty well. We're sitting again similar dry matters. Protein was a little bit lower, around about the 13.5 from memory, but we still had over 12 ME. So intake again in that, we were looking at a base rate of 10 litres for second cut, and again in contrast, generally last year's second cuts averaged really about 6-7 litres at best. So that is one factor here that's made a massive difference. Second thing, really, we are soil sampling in here on a regular basis, and I would make the comment that 97% of soils in Northern Ireland are actually suboptimal. So in terms of either pH and or NPK status, we have a lot of work to do in Northern Ireland to improve that figure. Likewise, from a fertiliser cost point of view, if we're applying fertiliser at a pH of 5.5 or less than 6, the reality we may only be getting up to 55, 60, 70% of fertiliser intake. But again, yeah, we are soil sampling in here annually, and absolutely we're taking corrective treatment as necessary, but certainly, yeah, absolutely pH is the critical aspect, and we're finding on so many farms we're spreading fertiliser, and to be honest with you, the uptake is not good enough.
Because I think what we've been chatting earlier, you were mentioning that between the increase in feed costs and increase in fertiliser costs, that's going to add a few pence per litre in terms of
There's
costs.
no doubt where we're sitting at currently in terms of increased costs. We are looking here at 2.5 to 3 pence per litre. So there's absolutely no doubt we have to improve our forage component of the diet, and that is something that I think a lot of Northern Ireland farms can do, and I accept totally the weather plays a major role. Contracting is also another factor, but I think our main factor right now is we need to go right back to soil fertility and ensure again we're liming at the right time, we're spreading fertiliser A, the right rate, and B, again the right compound. But absolutely we need to improve in that area.
You mentioned earlier, obviously it's a multi-cut system and quite high energy, but what about balancing that sort of ration in terms of fibre, and how are you doing that?
Yeah, and that we always get those questions in relation to why not just grow that silage out a little bit longer, get a bit more fibre. The challenge with that again is your dry matter will change certainly, your protein will drop radically. Your ME can go from 12.1, 12.2, and we can drop to 10, 10.5, or I've seen less. So the concern is that we need good forage, and again, even looking at the research aspect, you will clearly see that as you improve your digestibility, as you lift your D value of that silage, those cows will physically consume more, and again, AFBI have done work to prove that. Likewise, again, the more feed you drive into these cows, it's really simple, the more milk they produce and the higher your milk components. So there's a few things absolutely which can be looked at on a lot of farms. For an example, if we bring in silage here that is worth 12 litres, which is what Stephen's first cut is, if I compare that to silage that has been grown out with a higher NDF value, the reality that might only be worth 6 litres. 6 litre gap on paper is equivalent to 3 kilos a meal. So the long story short is get me good forage and your meal is less. But absolutely one challenge is we have to balance the overall diet. We are very fortunate here. We have whole crop in the diet, so we have a starch and fibre component from there. And this year we are also factoring a little bit of lucerne. Historically, we would have run a little bit of straws and half a kilo, purely just again value of straw, availability of straw. The decision was made to move to lucerne in terms of value for money. But the other factor as well is as you bring in an alternative forage, so by bringing in whole crop, maize, silage or any other alternative forage, there is research again to prove that you will also drive your total forage intakes. So from that point of view, I think that's one of the reasons again we're getting such good intakes here. Certainly other factors that are then impacting again in terms of our total forage intakes in here is again just feed space is one factor. So we have management and environmental aspects. So we have feed space, we then factor in the presentation of the mix. So we're currently mixing here with a Keenan diet feeder. So again, you have in theory consistency every day. So there's no big variation to that cow's diet on a daily basis. Obviously the robot pusher, the Juno there, is also contributing to increased feed intakes. As that robot is constantly pushing feed in, the cow is sure to have feed in front of her daily. So in addition to that, obviously herd health, which Adam has talked about, we are on top of herd health in here. I mean, the vet is in here regularly. So it's really a combination of factors to get our overall, but I would certainly emphasise that to drive litres, the first starting point here is I need good forage. It doesn't matter what ration you feed. If our basic factor, i.e. the forage in this diet, is not right and we're not getting intakes, we're not going to drive performance as we are here currently. And equally from a herd health point of view, that has to be right in terms of the herd health as in clinical signs, so IBR, BVD, etc. But also things like lameness. Rumen health is critical. In addition obviously to the diets that we're running in here and the high digestible fibre, we also have toxin binder, acid buff, and cows have access 24/7 to rock salt. And again, that's just to ensure that we balance rumen health as effectively as we physically can. Obviously feet on this type of system is critical, and feet need to be trimmed on a regular basis, and again that is the case. Again, to keep movement, like we're averaging I think 3.1 here currently in terms of visits, so if we had an issue with feet, the reality we would not be driving visits, we would not be driving
Stephen regularly bathing here too.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a combination of all these factors that are driving current herd performance in here.
Fantastic. My name's Ian Watson. I'm part of the Genus Genetic Services team, and I just want to give you a wee bit of background in the herd and what we're trying to do here with Stephen. So basically this herd has been AI bred for upwards of at least 50 years. So it has. Stephen's father before him would have been using AI, and Stephen has continued along that line. Basically the type of cow they've been breeding for is a medium-sized cow with plenty of dairy strength, good udders and good legs and feet, and that has been the aim throughout over all those years. So it's been very much the one focus type of cow they've been trying to breed. Couple of years ago, David McAfee, who would be the rep in here for Stephen, a couple of years ago David came and asked me if I would run a mating program for them, just to try and tweak one or two wee things to make it better for the robots. Basically what we do on the GMS side is we custom breed the cow to suit your needs. We run a mating program, and we can cover 4 different types of systems. One is for cows that are in intensive management. One would be for cows that's durability, we call it, and basically that's cows that are in the house in the winter time and out grazing in the summer time. We do a grass based option, which would probably for New Zealand type men, and then we've brought on board about 5-6 years ago for robot systems, and it's for the robot system we're on here with Stephen obviously. And the difference between the robot system and any other is we pay more attention to udders. You would be well aware if you're milking cows and robots that you need the teats well nice and square on the udder. You want a wee bit of teat length Milk and speed is also important. Udder cleft is important as well, because if a cow has too strong an udder cleft, it tends to pull the cow's back teats too close, and whenever cows get later in lactation, those teats can pull in and cross, and that's a no-no for a lot of the robots. So a lot more emphasis placed on udders whenever you're doing a mating program for a robot system. The mating program also takes into consideration inbreeding and also genomic defects. So that's all covered. Stephen's also milk recording, so we make full use of that. We pull his milk records into it as well, and that gives us a complete picture of what we're trying to do then. Health traits are also included in this. We like bulls with good fertility and good somatic cell count scores. Stephen has been genomic testing his heifer calves every year for the last couple of years, and the big benefit from that is if you go on parent averaging and you don't have a genomic test, you take it, the calf takes 50% of the genetics from his mother, 50% from the father, and you can work out a parent average. A parent average is only 30% reliable. But if you genomic test these calves here and take a hair sample from them, once we get the genomics back, it can tell us what percentage. This is in layman's terms to try and make it simple. Actually, it's a bit more complicated than this. But basically, this calf here, he could maybe take 75% of his genetics from his sire and only 25% from his mother. But you wouldn't know that to look at the calves, so you have to run a genomics test to find out. And what Stephen can do is he can rank the calves. So whenever it comes to serving those calves, when they're maiden heifers, he can select sex semen to go onto his tops of his heifer calves, and if he wants to, he can breed the bottom end of the calves then to beef. So he can, or of his maiden heifers then to beef. So overall, it gives you a bigger advantage, when you're breeding program. So Stephen has sort of, not only has he incorporated the technology and the milking side of the business, but he's really incorporated all the modern technology and the breeding side as well. And if you do that, you're going to finish with a herd of profitable cows, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, we're doing not too bad. We're just over the 41 litre average there at the minute. On their average days in milk's 150.
Very good.
We're doing 3.2 visits a day, and we still have 17% free time.
Excellent.
So
and how many cows have you on at the minute? How many's milking?
200.
200 milking.
So we have still a few dry, so there's capacity for 220.
You more coming in, or are you comfortable at that sort of 200 mark? Or
200, 210. I don't want the free time down too much I don't have much issues chasing cows at the minute. If you come out in the morning, they're going to be maybe 7 cows to gather up.
Couple
the tighter,
road, essentially.
The tighter you run that, the more you will get.
So the 2 per road. So how long does your routine take here in the morning, roughly?
It would take about time you come out and pull out what's to do. You have to do it at the high end and then at the low end as well, as they're dispatched, and then do your robots. Should be an hour.
Mm-hmm. So collect the cows, sort out your robots, and then you're feeding and bedding. Then
feed cows all as soon as the robot's done in the morning. Feed the cows, and then when they're up eating, we get them bedded. Okay. And you just do feeding and bedding once a day.
Feeding and bedding once a day, and then just tidy up the second time, or just leave them, or
pretty much just leave them unless there's a wee bit of dung in the cubby. You pull it off.
Just pull that off.
Milk speed's 2.9 there a minute. I usually sit around 3.
Excellent. Yeah.
So it's something you keep an eye on as well. Yeah. So more.
Yeah. Good milk speed.
The more milk speed, the more free time you'll get with. Just over the 8,000 a day, so it's roughly 2,000 a robot at the minute they're averaging.
Yeah, excellent. That's very good.
Yeah, mainly just myself and my dad, and then we have a very good relationship with our local contractor who does slurry, silage, ploughing, fertiliser. So it lets us concentrate on the stock end of things.
Yes.
And